Good morning, everybody. How are we today? Are we good? I can see some nodding. You're good. Excellent. Interaction already. Good morning, everyone, and everyone watching live on IBC TV as well. And welcome to the final day of the IBC Conference 2018. Can you believe the time has gone by that quickly? Yes, is probably what you're thinking. I'm your host this morning, and this afternoon, actually, I'm LJ Rich. It's nice to meet you all. And we've got a packed day in store for you today, kicking off in a few moments with the Innovation Keynote, which is going to be quite a lot of fun. And this is going to be followed by day 2 of the Cutting Edge track before our closing roadmap panel, industry, top thinkers and practitioners discuss what caught their attention here at IBC 2018, and hopefully help you navigate the year and plan the cycle that lies ahead in 2019 as well. So if you've not already downloaded the IBC app, do it now by searching for IBC 2018 in the App Store. It's your last chance, and also it'll allow you to post questions, rate sessions, and even take part in them by going to Interact with Sessions in the menu. You can also interact on Slido, that's sli.do, and use code IBC 2018, and you'll be able to ask questions not just of our next interviewees, but also throughout the day. So I massively recommend that. And please feel free to post using the hashtag IBC 2018. There have been thousands upon thousands of tweets. Yours will join the masses as the people who were in the know first. There are no planned fire alarms today, which is good. Should the fire alarm sound, please calmly make your way to the nearest exits, which are, in true airline cabin style, the ones you came in on. Jolly good. Right. On to the good stuff. This morning, we're going to talk about innovating for a sustainable world and a better planet for everyone. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But putting customers first and giving people what they want when they want it, it's the promise of the digital and on-demand economy. But what about the bigger picture? How does meeting the needs of individuals help sustainability at scale? Our 2 guests for this session will happily help us find answers to this rather large question. They use design and technology to solve social and environmental issues, whilst also delivering sustainable business models. That sounds like a very, very tall order. I'm going to be very interested to hear about what they're doing. So, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Innovation Keynote at IBC 2018 with Lily Cole and Kwame Ferreira, founders of Impossible.com. Please give them a giant round of applause. Head on over to the big sofa. Wow, a suitably anthemic welcome for you, Lily and Kwame. Thank you so much for coming. So, cool. How are you feeling this morning?
Very good.
Good.
How are you?
I think we are too. So let's begin by getting a bit of background on Impossible.com. It grew out of your respective businesses. Lily, you created the gifting app called Impossible People. And Kwame, you were running a design and engineering business, right? So how did you get from there to here?
So I set up Impossible initially as a platform to encourage people to do kind of skill sharing, community-driven work. And I met Kwame in the process, and he had the design and engineering firm that helped us design and engineer the kind of first version of that idea. And then we were working very close together on that project, and we started working on different ideas, and over the course of the next few years developed a couple of businesses together. And at some point it just made sense to bring kind of our respective companies together, and hence Impossible as it is today.
And how do you see your different roles within the company?
Go. I'm supposed to be the CEO, but go.
I mean, I enjoy the kind of more creative side and idea side of like seagull management, as Kwame likes to refer, turn up and just offer some ideas. No, I'm really more interested in the ideas. I'm not actually that. I don't think either good at or really enjoy running a business and the kind of more day-to-day stuff. And so I let him do that side of things.
That's your answer. I don't know how to add to that. It's very much our own tribe, and I didn't really want to have a job. I wanted to create an environment and a space where we could create for others, help others, but also create for ourselves. And yeah, in that sense, I help run that ship. And Lily is very much that person that has an incredible vision that everyone respects, and that really enriches the whole, I guess, our purpose, right? And that's it. So it's a nice symbiosis. So far, so good.
So far, so good. And you have a diverse collection of products, including an insurance company, a bot that gathers data about employees' output, and, an eyewear startup, which we're going to talk about a little later. But how does it fit together? What's the common thread?
Unfortunately, we don't really have a thesis in terms of, like VCs have an investment thesis. They will just invest in, I don't know, water, right? We're like happy kids in a playground. It's like, I'd never thought I would be selling insurance in my life. But
I think that the thread is the kind of the tribe that Kwame mentioned, to the people within the company, and we often act as an incubator for people in the company's ideas. So the insurance came from somebody who is a kind of colleague and friend who wanted to develop this business, and we helped him develop it. And I'd say that's probably the most common thread, is that when somebody has an idea that we really like, we try and support them with that.
And it's not, it's not just it is the champion behind that, but in the case of insurance, it's the fact that whenever you buy a policy, you actually help somebody to get somebody off the streets, right? So that rang a bell with us. If it wasn't for that, we probably wouldn't really engage, right? So there's an underlying driving engine around how can we drive towards the future we want, rather than the future that we think is going to happen because it's inevitable. And yeah, that's it.
So it's like taking responsibility for your role in promoting social good.
Yeah, social and environmental good, yeah.
So that's a nice way to talk about the concept of planet-centric design, which I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more about. And also it would be interesting for any companies who want to take this approach. So, yes.
So planet-centric design, we've been doing design for a very long time, and very much under the paradigm of the customer is always right.
And user-centered design.
Yeah, the customer is always right, so we always pander to the customer, to the user, right? So you put the user at the center of your creative process, and you ask the user, what do you want? How can we solve your problems? And we've realized that presents a tremendous problem, because more and more we're creating products and services that are just so sexy and so good that they're just selling out, and we're having to produce more of those, and that is putting a burden on our planet. So we felt like we had to step back a little and not question the user-centered design, because it's obviously very successful, but start to ask a few harder questions at the very beginning of the creative process, right? And those questions have to do with alignment with the SDGs, UN Sustainability Development Goals, and throughout the whole creative process, drive towards a balance between the human sphere and the biosphere, right? So how can we, because you're always taking something from the planet somehow, how can we make sure that we even that relationship? Because we are the dominant species, so how can we make it an elegant dance rather than give me that copper, give me that precious screen time, give me that. So that's planet-centric design in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there are extra resources needed to do this? If you're a company, what are the hurdles that you might expect and the things that you need to get over in order to adopt a more planet-centric design approach?
The hurdles. It's really every creative process starts with a conversation, and it's about having a meaningful conversation at the very start, rather than let's just do something and then offset our carbon footprint at the very end, right? Let's make sure that we bake in that vision for the future, that more balanced vision for the future at the very start. So it is, I wish I could tell you that we have a methodology, it's online, it's open source, it's being deployed now in 37 cities. We're constantly validating it. It's not by any means, it's not perfect yet, but it is simple. It's simple in the sense that it is about starting that conversation early on rather than after the fact.
And I'd say it's happening across the board in a looser way, where you see it at, like, this conference's commitment to try and not use plastic, to Apple's announcement recently on their kind of environmental recycling program. Like, across the board, you're seeing companies moving in the direction towards more what we'd call kind of planet-centric thinking. But there aren't really any frameworks, and there isn't really kind of, for new companies or even for big existing companies who want to move more into that space, you can employ people, who might be experts in the field, but there aren't really existing frameworks that help guide industries in that direction. And we're not saying that this is perfect, but we're just trying to start an attempt at, like, creating a conversational language around what planet-centric design would look like. And hopefully, as Kwame said, it's open source, so hopefully that will be a kind of in dialogue with other organizations. We've partnered with Make Sense, so they've been deploying it around the world, so that it becomes an evolving framework that at some point might be closer to perfect.
I understand that you've actually turned down work that doesn't fit with these sorts of goals.
Yeah, we do that all the time, actually. My brother is the CFO, and he obviously has a few issues with that sometimes. But we do, and we will continue to do so because I don't really want to do or spend my energy, which is very finite on this planet, doing a gambling site or helping a company that's selling carbonated sugar water sell more carbonated sugar water. It's not really where we want to spend our time. But at the same time, sometimes those conversations start off quite on the wrong foot, and we do always try to offer a solution that's more aligned with our vision of the future. And it does happen that sometimes we find a common ground that we can actually work with. So we don't see companies or businesses out there as evil. We just see that we have a very clear vision for the future we want in this planet. And sometimes it's aligned, sometimes it's not.
Okay. And a lot of people here are obviously in media and broadcasting business. Can you see any applications for planet-centric design ideas in this industry?
Yeah.
Of course you can.
No, we can. It's
operations, production. What's the kind of carbon impact of production, whether it's plastic water bottles or energy sources, and also even anything printed. Like, we printed a magazine recently, we had the paper carbon balance. You can have any printer in the UK can carbon balance paper. And it's just those kind of simple things, and just thinking about the different areas that your business or your work might be having impact, and then ways of minimizing that impact.
And also, that's from the kind of the biosphere side. From the human sphere, the type of behavior that we instill. I remember a few years ago when we were doing Fairphone, we were customizing the user experience, the operating system, and we created this app called Peace of Mind. And every time you turn your phone on, it tells you you reset. So there's a timer. So you were in peace of mind for 115 minutes. Amazing, right? Obviously, the operators hated it because you were like competing not to unlock your phone. But instilling that type of behavior is, at the time was something we felt like we had to do because people are definitely getting addicted to this. So there's impact in culture as well, not just in nature.
And actually, it's been quite phenomenal. I mean, it's been said a million times, but the David Attenborough Blue Planet's effect this year, I think in the UK, in terms of consciousness around plastic, has been phenomenal. And it's really powerful, actually, to see potentially how much more effective storytelling is as the device for messaging than, a million kind of philanthropic campaigns or NGOs or politicians,
It just took some beautiful editing and a fabulous looking program, and everyone throws away their water bottles. I mean, you mentioned Fairphone briefly. I was lucky enough in my job at the BBC, I was holding a Fairphone, one of the very first ones, and thought, this is a fantastic idea. And we've got a few case studies that hopefully you can talk us through, and why not start with the Fairphone? This was a modular phone, and you can see it you can basically take out bits and upgrade other bits, and so it's more environmentally friendly than a phone that you have to take apart. Because phones and iPads, they're generally designed for assembly. They're not designed for modding. I know I had to fix my own iPad a few years ago. I did it for the BBC and completely regretted doing it because it took hours and hours, and I had to edit out all of the swear words when I was in the edit suite afterwards. But could you tell us a little bit more about what led to you being part of this? And
we met Bas and Tessa, the early founders of Fairphone, at a conference, and we had the only stand that didn't have any screens. And we had like a little nice couch, and this was at a media conference, and we got on, and we believed in their vision of cleaning up the supply chain, which is ultimately what Fairphone is about, but doing it in an open source way, in a way where others, the Apples, the Samsungs, any big OEM out there can kind of go, oh, that's where they get their coltan from. Okay, great. They're not actually subsidizing an ongoing war in Congo. Perhaps we could do the same, right? It's open source, and we very much fell in love with that idea of challenging planned obsolescence. So if you look at the way iPads or most devices are built, they're built with a longevity date, right? That gets modeled into the business, and to the share price. You just know that in next year you're going to get the next model. And Fairphone was really about, how can we extend the life of these devices? So modularity isn't a fad; it's just it's a reality that allows us to stay with those devices a lot longer, and therefore, again, the planet-centric approach of finding that sweet spot between the biosphere and the human sphere, right? How can we juggle that? And so, that's Fairphone for you. It's been a tremendously successful enterprise. It's based over here in Amsterdam. Took over the offices from Greenpeace. I think there's something symbolic about that. And it's led by a brilliant team and a very visionary young gentleman called Bas. We're very proud to have been able to push this forward. And now we see Apple just announced that they're increasing the amount of
environmental recycling.
Exactly.
That, yeah.
And I don't know if this had anything to do with it. Maybe it did. And if it did, I am so happy, right? Yeah.
And if you're interested in this sort of thing, the Restart Project is a volunteer-run organisation that will teach you how to fix your old kit, and they've got places all over the world, so that's quite a nice sort of segue. You'd probably be interested in that too. Let's talk about our next case study, which is being beautifully demonstrated by your face, Kwame. It's the wires. Tell us more about it.
It's also a modular design. In that you can take so you can see in the image, there's a single metal frame. You can see on his face, which is one piece of wire, and it's got invisible hinges that allow it to fold down. So that's kind of from an aesthetic perspective, the innovation, that there's no screws. You won't be on the beach with a bit of sand stuck in the side of your sunglasses, and it looks really beautiful. But then from a modular perspective, the rims, which are here, are 3D printed, which makes much less waste in the process, actually no waste, compared to most sunglasses, which cut them out of a sheet of acetate and then throw everything else away. And they can be taken off and replaced with new rims. So the idea is that you could change your style, you could switch between prescription and sunglasses. When we kind of release new colors, or you want to have a new look, you could do that at much less material cost, and actually much less financial cost, by just replacing the rims. So we want to treat the frames a bit more like jewelry. And the idea is if you look after them, they'll last a lifetime.
It's such a logical thing. I don't understand why that's not been done before. Do you find that with your ideas?
No, we built it because we felt like there was nothing.
I'd never thought about sunglasses before.
No?
It hadn't even crossed my mind how they were made. I knew so little about the industry. I didn't know that you waste loads of plastic in the process. And then we worked with a designer called Yayi Norman, and he handmade his own from a single piece of wire to go on holiday, and really liked it, and then thought, well, that could be an interesting idea. We did the first collection handmade in Zimbabwe using the African wire crafts tradition, and then that's evolved into the product now.
Okay. And then let's bring in Navify, which is another project. I love how these are all so diverse. And this, correct me if I'm wrong, but from the video I watched online, it's kind of like a Trello board, but for cancer treatment. Would that be?
That is correct. It's the world's most advanced tumor board. And what a tumor board does, it's a piece of software that allows a whole bunch of stakeholders around a particular patient to come together and move the treatment along. And it's, cancer treatment, you have oncology, radiology, pathology, you have a whole surgeons, you have a whole plethora of moving pieces. So how can the patient feel like his or her case is being treated holistically, right? And so it's a very big problem, almost a quasi-impossible problem to solve. And we've reduced the time that it takes for an oncologist to kind of sit down and go through a case by over 52%. That's the latest, the latest study. It's 2 years of work. It's unlike anything we've done, but then again, we're very, heterogeneous in our approach. And we're extremely, extremely proud of it. We're now thinking, how can we, what's the next level of this, and how can we make this even more efficient for the patient? And there are ideas around mental health that not a lot of people are talking about, that we'd like to bring in, because everything is just about, cells and cancer, and if you look at a case history, at the case holistically, you will have inevitably to deal with the patient's mental state, which is super important. So yes, loads of challenges here, and it's just a great project.
Yeah. And finally, Wiki Tribune. You've been involved in this as well. This is something that Jimmy Wales has been doing. It's a mission around fake news. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Jimmy he's one of the board members from Impossible, and he'd been talking to me for many years about this media idea of trying to creating, I don't know if you're officially allowed to call it, but Wikipedia for the news in a way, so crowdsourced journalism, and I thought it was such an amazing idea, and I was kind of egging him on, and then eventually he bit the bullet, yeah, and then Kwame got involved in the design of the kind of first iteration of the site, which maybe you can speak to, and it's live now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what we tend to do is we tend to run very quickly. So our planet-centric methodology is one where within a week, at the end of the first week, you're already playing with the prototype. And that suited Jimmy's kind of rhythm, because he's also very effervescent. And at the end of the first week, we had the first prototype, and we could start validating and we could start measuring in a very lean West Coast kind of startup-y approach. It's an ongoing experiment, and it's a very pertinent one for the media industry, because it touches the realms of obviously fake news and how do you validate news, but also this idea of content legitimacy, whether coming from a professional or from the community. How do you bring the two together, and how do you ensure that the connection between the two will produce better content, right? And there's loads of learnings. I mean, we could talk endlessly about it. And at the very core, it questions a lot of, it opens a lot of questions around what media really is, how to monetize it, because the moment you bring ads on board, it's like, okay, now you're starting to create content for ads, and then you have an issue. So subscription is the way forward, and that, I think the industry is going in that direction. So it's been a petri dish of a lot of experimentation, and it continues to be that. And we're very happy to have kickstarted it, or helped kickstarted it.
Yeah, you can have a look on wikitribune.com if you're interested. I did spend some entertaining few minutes on there yesterday. And also Bellingcat, if you've not seen that in terms of journalism. I can see a few people nodding their heads there. It's worth having a look at that, which I think kind of fits in quite nicely with the Wiki Tribune project. Okay, well, I'm going to ask a few questions from Slido in a few minutes' time, so please keep your questions coming in, and that's on the other iPad, so I apologise for this slightly environmentally unfriendly double iPad presenting. Let's briefly talk about big trends and themes, because clearly you're across industries. You have this rarefied and amazing view of, I guess, how the world is turning from a very interesting perspective, which I'm going to ask you about. In terms of human behaviours, are there big trends and themes that you can see emerging?
Yeah, I feel very optimistic that things are going in a positive direction. In terms of trends, when we touched on I think there's been a really kind of tidal wave trend against plastic, and especially single-use plastic in the last year, that we're only really at the beginning of. I've been looking in the kind of sustainable fashion space for, 14 years now, and I just went to an exhibition at the V&A last week, that it's quite extraordinary to see how big that movement is now, and how many mainstream brands are engaging and thinking about the kind of supply chain, both the supply chain impact and actually the afterlife of products and repairing, reuse, etc., in a way that was very niche, over 10 years ago. I think people are starting to question screen time and addictive relationships to technology, very kind of early stages. Obviously, there's a lot to do with diversity and gender pay, which is equality, which is important. Is there anything else? I think conscious consumerism in general, I'd say, is growing massively.
I guess I'd come at it more from the kind of the geeky side. We're doing a lot in augmented reality right now, which is a big deal for us. And this idea that we can augment we've been working on an impossible wardrobe, and side by side on this app called Glimpse that we started, at least I started, because I wanted to question fashion itself, because we dress up once a day, but why do we only dress up once a day when we can have all this digital fashion, right? All you have to do is have some wires that can actually see it, or your phone, and I could look at you and kind of go, ooh, that's interesting, right? And you can change that. Sorry, it's really early in the morning. The fact that we can augment our spaces. If you look at Apple and their whole AR kit, we were responsible for working very closely with Google on their AR, on what became AR Core, so Project Tango. That is a space where we see limitless opportunities for changing the way we behave and changing our consumption of digital content, right? Making it a little bit more natural. You know, why do we have to do this all the time? So there's a lot there, and the one I already touched upon has to do with mental health. We turned our office manager into a bot, and we sent her on holiday because she was just doing like really like. It's true. It's called Nikabot. It's a company now that serves thousands of other companies. It does time tracking.
She's kept her job though, just to be clear.
No, she's left now.
Oh,
unfortunately, yeah, she left. And the and what this bot does is just ask people, ask our employees, and if you install it in your company, ask your employees, what you're working on, and you just go, oh, I'm working on this, great, and then converts all that into this business intelligence. But it needs to start asking more interesting questions around how are you feeling? Did you have a rough day? We noticed that you typed a lot less today. So it's a bit Big Brother-ish, but obviously a bit more open source, so you can audit it. There's an inevitable trend towards mental health, and the media will have a huge responsibility in that. So we need to start taking care of that. So it has to do with addiction, screen time, productivity. So yeah.
Brilliant. I'm just going to take some questions from Slido, and we have one from Andrew that says, do you have a framework that you follow to perform due diligence research on companies you might partner with to ensure that they share your company ethos and principles?
Good question.
We start with coffee. I like to meet people. I like to look people in the eyes. And ultimately, businesses are composed of, primates like us, and we really need to engage at the very conversational level. The companies we tend to work with are very large, so it's fairly easy to understand what the footprint is quite quickly. That's. Do we have a framework to kind of score them? I don't think we're there yet, but it's a good shout out. We'll keep an eye out for that.
Okay, I've got another question here that's asking, how do you prioritize things?
Oh,
I mean, that's a
not well enough.
question,
That's a
isn't
good
it?
question, yeah.
Prioritize things, what do you mean? Like
all the different projects, I guess.
All the different projects?
Yes, how do you focus?
We're a big group of people, right?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
We're not like individually responsible for all the things you've seen today. And, and I think it's a case of seeing where people are most passionate, where people are most skilled, and making sure it's a champion really for... Where
we can offer most value. At the end of the day, we're problem solvers, right? And if it's an impossible problem, we're kind of all over it. And then it's a question of which studio and which studio takes it and putting a champion, leading it, and then creating that startup environment around.
For example, the ones you saw, Chris Dressel fronts, a guy in San Francisco, fronts Navify. Yain Norman's the designer I mentioned, working with Kwame on wires. Like each project has a different team of people, and it wouldn't work without that structure.
Yeah.
Well, it's safe to say you keep yourselves busy because, as well as Lily, you're forging an acting career. You've made a film together about the refugee crisis on Samos in Greece. You produce a magazine. Lily, you guest edited National Geographic. Ooh. Where does this all fit in with your vision for impossible.com?
I mean, I made a decision. I was working pretty much full-time for Impossible for a few years, and then I made a decision to like really reduce that to part-time because I wanted to be more creative and do more kind of acting and filmmaking. And that's the part of me that still overcrosses with Impossible quite a lot because we've produced quite a few films through Impossible, and we've produced the magazine, and I kind of get more involved in that now creative side. What was the question? Sorry, again, I'm losing my train of thought.
No, it's all right. It was basically about how all of the stuff that you do, by the sounds of it, outside Impossible.com, does it
together.
fit in with your vision?
Well, to be honest, Impossible was born from the same part of me that like is interested in National Geographic and is interested in making films about meaningful issues. So it all kind of comes from the same place, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And now it's just great because there's a kind of sizable group of people that allows us to kind of expand, I guess, the capacity we have to work on these types of projects.
Cool. Now, do you see any particularly large challenges that face media and broadcasting at the moment?
I think technology is like an amazing challenge and opportunity, right? Because it's moving so quickly, constantly disrupting the landscape and the possibilities. And that is a challenge for kind of existing players and for kind of remodeling business models and thinking about changing consumer appetites. But it's also a massive opportunity for kind of new innovation and new ideas.
And not just in on the consumption end, because we know that's being disrupted quite heavily. On the production side, so if you look at how, I was looking at this technology created by this Israeli at Seattle University, where you can have anybody say anything on video that they didn't say, and it's completely believable, right?
The deepfakes stuff.
Yeah, the whole deepfake movement. I mean, that presents a massive challenge, right? And an opportunity at the same time. So there's, I think in terms of the business models as well, I think we need to be a little bit more creative, or the media industry needs to be a bit more creative on how they monetize their content in order not to compromise its I guess its value, right? It's very easy to sell out. I think those two things are in my mind. On the production side and on the consumption, there's a lot to be talked about.
Before I go back to Slido for some more questions, I wanted to ask what your relationship with technology is outside of Impossible.com. I mean, you mentioned you're a bit of a geek, which is obviously everybody here loves that. But do you have a smart house? How do you consume media? Are you a streamer? Are you a downloader? Do you watch old-style TV? Do you sit with your phone in front of the telly? How does it work in your house?
I mean, in terms of the gadgets we have at home, I think we're pretty normal. I don't think we exceptionally go in either direction. But I actually think we make a real effort to be off technology. We have a 3-year-old, and very conscious of like her relationship to technology and how our behavior's modeling hers. So I'd say if anything, actually, we try and like create spaces and times where we're not allowed to open a phone. It's very hard to do, right? Because you just slip back into the behavior patterns of just like checking an email or like watching Netflix.
So yesterday, was it yesterday? So Lily pulls out these 2 taps, right? And we live in Great Britain, like crazy island. And in that island, they hadn't invented the mixer. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. You have to mix the hot and cold, right? So it's not one tap. You have to open the 2, and then nothing ever works. And
real point of conflict, 'cause I like the tap.
Right? And I'm like, look, it's this. We've gone over this, like we're 200 years into the future, and then they just pull these out from the 18th century, and now we're redoing the kitchen, and we're going back in time to a time like that.
But we have another tap
right?
that's got a sensor, and it's so annoying because you have to like wave it every time you want to. Yeah.
You can get digital ones now that run your bath for you, like have the temperature.
Yeah,
I'm really into analog stuff.
Yeah, so just an episode that illustrates our relationship to technology.
But we are actually making a film on this point at the moment that we filmed recently, and we're just editing for the Serpentines Marathon this weekend in London, about a guy called Mark Boyle, who's decided he lived for 3 years in the past without money, and now he's decided to try and live without any electricity or technology. To quite a hardcore extreme, like no fridge, no freezer, no TV, obviously no phones or computers. So we went and followed him for a few days in his life, and the time it takes him to do everything, 3 hours to wash his clothes, or 6 hours to try and cycle to the lake to fish his dinner. And the reason we did that exploration is, one, I think it's really fascinating why he's doing that and the effects that that's had in his kind of emotional landscape. But also because I think we are at a point where we're kind of questioning our own relationship to technology. And I'm not going to go as far personally at this moment in time as him, but I do want to, think about quality of life and actually de-gadgetizing, maybe.
And the moment you remove technology is the moment you bring in community, because you need people to help you out, because you don't have, suddenly it's like chopping that tree requires, 3 people, not just like, so suddenly you have a sense of community just by downgrading your Wi-Fi connectivity. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, because if you think about it, the digital, kind of the amazing side of what digital offers does silo us in many ways, because you can just get your food cooked for you and delivered without really speaking to anybody in the process.
That's true. I think technology, I view it as quite neutral, because you've also got people who are already isolated, who have a lifeline through the internet, I guess. And in fact, when we talk about this sense of community, we have a question in from Slido saying the office bot has the capability to add pressure to an individual around output. Would you build in a conscience in an ideal world? I presume when you're talking about mental health and adding that to the bot, that's something that you're considering. But how would you feel about if an AI just went, hey, how are you doing today?
But this is a really interesting question, not just for us with the bot, but in general with AI, right? Like, what is the conscience, and who are we modeling AI on? What type of brain, and what's the kind of moral framework?
So the internet is fundamentally very dumb. It is the internet itself. So you can look at it from an architectural perspective. There are a few wires and some satellite connections in here and there, but there's no intelligence in it. And where we're going towards is an IntelliNet, right? The connectivity is not enough. You need to start to take into account behavioral patterns. So when you bring in data, or big data, which was big, 2 or 3 years ago, it was like the buzzword. So the architecture plus big data, you'll have IntelliNet, and that means that all of these bots, all of these little apps that we create will inevitably look back and kind of go, oh man, those guys were really just pipes. There's just pipes. There was no intelligence whatsoever. And we're becoming more intelligent. Now, with intelligence, the big challenge is purpose. Why are we creating this bot? So we could optimize our bottom line P&L, so that we could have somebody that was doing something not meaningful go do something more meaningful. What's the purpose, right? And if that purpose is authentic and genuine, then we have alignment. Then we have a planet-centric way of doing things. If it's just the question was more about for the employees, right? And how the bot's interacting with the other employees. So whether there's a conscience built into that. The consciousness will become inevitable, but it needs to be open source. It needs to be, every employee needs to be able to audit it, needs to be able to own their data, and needs to be able to feel comfortable in that relationship. And if they're not, then they need to opt out and not be discriminated for that or penalized for that. So, and this is where open source technology is super important, and it's more important in an IntelliNet world than ever before, because we need to be able to audit these systems. And if they're closed source, then you're just subscribing to Pandora's boxes, right?
Yeah, I think it's also a question of making sure that the data going in is as unbiased and unfiltered as possible, because otherwise you end up with very odd, skewed results when you give data to AI. But that's a massive subject, and we're nearly out of time, sadly. So I'm just going to wrap by asking you both how, because we could chat for ages, but I'd just like to ask, how do you see impossible.com in 5 years' time? What kind of work would you like to do? I mean, clearly you get to pick and choose what you'd like to do, but are there things in the future that you think, I'd really like to be involved with this, or this is the next thing I'm interested in?
I think it would be, I'd really love to see the kind of planet-centric design thesis evolve, and kind of become a kind of really strong version of itself that learns a lot through conversations with other startups and companies. I mean, we have a lot of our own startups, and we'll probably have a few more, and hopefully watch some of those grow. And personally, I'm really interested in the kind of content filmmaking side. So I'd like to continue to produce content. I couldn't say exactly what in 5 years' time, but that's a thread that I would like to see grow.
Brilliant.
We definitely want to do more storytelling. Storytelling is a big deal. And then as you said, the startups. I think we're running multiple startups right now. Most of them we created ourselves, so they're no longer startups, like they're scale-ups. Like we're now in the process of turning them into meaningful businesses, and that's super challenging. But the cool thing is that you're constantly learning from your mistakes, and you constantly make mistakes. So we hope to be making more interesting mistakes in the next 5 years.
That's a brilliant way to leave it, and you're in a room full of people who love storytelling, so that's brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, a nice big round of applause for Lily and Kwame from impossible.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can chill there for a second if you like.
Oh, okay.
We've got a break soon. What a nice way to start our day, and best of luck in your endeavours. We're going to have a short break now, about 10 minutes or so. Please be back by 10:30 for a truly electrifying headliner, and I think you'll enjoy it, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you.
And we'll be hearing from the Impossible team here on IBC TV a little later this morning. We're going to talk about high-quality pictures.